Hello and welcome to Veterans Metals Workshop. I'm really glad to see you here today because we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to take a look at what Peter Morgan calls the elite of the fleet. We're going to take a look at the fighter squadron patches of the United States Navy, the guys that fly off the carrier. For example, we'll start with VF-1, the Wolfpack, which was the unit that, well, Maverick and Goose flew in during the movie Top Gun. But they didn't actually wear the Wolfpack patch. They wore another patch, and you'll be surprised what unit it was of. And I'll show you that in a minute. Now, it wasn't the first squadron. The first squadron was VF-14, the Top Hatters. And you can see over time that the Top Hat Squadron, well, the patch changes because the Navy activates and deactivates squadrons as necessary, according to the force structure, or if they deactivate a carrier, or the aircraft become obsolete, or Congress cuts their budget, then they reactivate squadrons as they need to. So you will have some squadrons activated and deactivated, and each time they do that, the new squadron sort of redesigns the patch, sometimes using bits and pieces of the old one, which makes it really neat. And you can see that in the Top Hat Squadron patch, how it evolves over time. And I'll show you some different variations. Most of these patches are from the period of Vietnam and Desert Storm. You know, you got to be where my period is. All right, I think you'll enjoy this. And by the way, if you do and you would like to see the Marine Corps squadrons, then let me know in the comments below, and we'll do one on Marine Corps squadrons. By the way, all of these patches came from Peter Morgan's book, Elite of the Fleet. So if you would like a good, library reference for all of these patches, you can still find this book. You may have to do a little digging or looking, but it's still out there. Great reference. All right, come on. Let's go start with the Wolfpack. Here's the Navy squadron patch of VF-1 known as the Wolfpack, and that's a pretty cool looking wolf head to have on there. And you can take a look at how they put the wolf head on the tail insignia of the F-14A Tomcat. VF-1 was established in October of 1972 and disestablished in September of 1993. During that time, it served on both the USS Enterprise, the USS Ranger, and the USS Kitty Hawk. In the movie Top Gun, the main characters, Maverick and Goose, served with the fictional version of VF-1 off the USS Enterprise. The patch they wore is shown on your right, and it was really the insignia of VAW-110, which was an airborne early warning squadron operating the Grumman E-2 Hawkeye. On your left is Strike Fighter Squadron Number 2, VFA-2, known as the Bounty Hunters, and they flew Super Hornets when they wore this patch. Their call sign was Bullet, and they were deployed on the Carl Vinson. On your right is VF-9A, which has a really cool skeleton holding a couple of wave-off paddles in the eye socket of the skull that they use for their insignia. The squadron patch for VF-11, known as the Red Rippers, was established in 1959 and is redesignated as VF-A-11 in 2005, which means attack. The Red Rippers flew the Crusader, the Phantom II, the Tomcat, the Super Tomcat, and the F-14B Tomcat. I have to love the Red Rippers tail insignia. There's an interesting series of patches for VF-14, the Top Hatters. They're a Navy attack fighter squadron, and they are the oldest active squadron in the Navy, tracing their history back to 1919. Their call sign is Camelot, and their tail code is NG. Shown on your left is the Navy's first jet squadron, VF-17A, in 1948, and they were flying off of the USS Saipan. In the center is the insignia adopted by VF-20 in 1946. Superimposed on the nose of a skull was a human skeleton with the arms holding paddles. They became the eyes of a skull, while the teeth represented by the words Fighting 20th. The insignia was in use from 1948 until the squadron was disestablished in 1969. On your far right is the Fighter Squadron 21 Freelancers patch, and it was redesignated as VF-1 in 1959 and disestablished in 1996. It was the third U.S. Navy squadron to have the VF-1 designation. See the Freelancers Black Panther insignia on the tail of the aircraft. Fighter Squadron 24's patch is shown on your left. They were known as the Fighting Renegades or the Red Checker Tails, and they added a Tomcat to their patch in 1977 when they started flying the Tomcat. Squadron 24 was disestablished in 1996. Fighter Squadron 31, known as the Tomcatters, had an insignia of Felix the Cat carrying a lighted bomb that really can be traced back to World War II. VF-31, the Tomcatters, was redesignated from VF-3 in 1948, and it was redesignated as VF-A-31, meaning an attack squadron. And during that time, it flew Panthers, the Banshees, Demons, Phantom II, and the F-14A Tomcat. You can't miss the Tomcatters insignia on the tail of their aircraft. Starting on your left are two variations of Fighter Squadron 32. They were known by the name of Swordsmen, and they flew Corsairs, Cougars, Crusaders, Phantom IIs, and the F-14A and B Tomcat. Here you can see their insignia of the sword on the tail of their aircraft. Shown on your right is the first insignia of Fighter Squadron 33. Back then, it used a screaming demon they called the Tarzers, I think. All right. And they were formed back in 1948 and used that as a squadron patch. Then they moved on to a new one called the Starfighters. They had a new insignia in the late 60s, which had the word Starfighter on the top and the squadron number on the bottom, and you can see that they have the lightning bolt emblazoned on the tail of their aircraft. Fighter Squadron 41 has a unique insignia of an ace of spades with the number 41 in the center, and they were known as the Black Aces. They were established in 1950, and you can see that they wore the Black Ace insignia on the tail of their aircraft. Another version of Fighter Squadron 41 is shown on the right. Shown here is a patch of Fighter Squadron 43 known as the Challengers. It's really neat. It has a male fist crushing a Soviet jet. It became a fighter squadron in 1973 and was disestablished in 1994. You can see the squadron patch painted in full color on the tail of all of the aircraft. Squadron 45 was known as the Blackbirds and had a really neat series of patches that represented their nickname. And for a time, they also served as a fleet adversary. You can clearly see the Blackbird insignia on the tail of their aircraft. Fighter Squadron 51 was known as the Screaming Eagles, and you can see the Screaming Eagle insignia on the tail of their aircraft. Fighter Squadron 74, known as the Bedevilers, had several really unique patches, one with either a dark blue flaming devil head inside of a gun sight with the name Bedevilers underneath, or a light blue devil's head with the Fighting 74th underneath the gun sight. They also had the devil's head on the tail of their aircraft. A really cool squadron patch is that of Fighter Squadron 84, known as the Jolly Rogers. I think you can figure that out just from looking at the patch. And they also had it really emblazoned on the tail of their aircraft, so it was very hard to miss the Jolly Rogers squadron. Fighter Squadron 96, the Fighting Falcons, has a neat insignia, a falcon swooping out of the sky, and you can see it emblazoned on the tail of their aircraft. Fighter Squadron 92 was known as the Silver Kings, and they had a unique insignia of a snake wrapped around the queen of a chess set over an ace of spades. See that they also proudly displayed their squadron patch on the tail of their aircraft. Fighter Squadron 101, the Grim Reapers, have a really neat squadron patch. It's the Grim Reaper in full flight coming after you. You can see that the squadron put the Grim Reaper on the tails of their aircraft. And that brings us to the last Fighter Squadron patch that we're going to look at today, and it's Fighter Squadron 102, the Diamondbacks. And of course, well, what a neat patch. It has a diamondback rattlesnake encircling the globe. And you can see they have the same insignia on the tail of their aircraft. Thank you for joining us today for our show on Navy Fighter Squadron patches. I hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed putting it on, and you now know the difference between a fighter squadron patch and perhaps what you've seen of a ship's patch. There's quite a difference between the design. Special thanks to Peter Morgan for providing all of the patches we've seen today in his book, Elite of the Fleet. And if you enjoyed this show, let us know. We need likes, we need subscribers. That'll keep us on the air. And if you want to see Marine Fighter Squadron patches, let me know in the comments below. Okay, see you next time on Veterans Medals Workshop.